All right, so I showed you what to check before you go ahead and use the saw. Let's draw a curve out so I can show you how to use this. So for this curve, we're going to do something that looks like this. Okay? So this side is my good side that I want to keep. This side is the waste side. This I'm going to throw away. So what I'm trying to do here is I want to plan as much forward progress with my saw as I can without having to go backwards and forwards and mess around with trying to get the saw to line up and to move forward. So it only cuts while you're moving into the saw blade. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take on this little curve here is I'm going to put in some what's called relief cuts. And this is kind of what they're going to look like. Relief cuts, R-E-L-I-E-F, relief cuts. So what's going to happen here as I go ahead and I start to cut on the waist side of the line, I never want to cross my line right here because that gets into the side of the part that I want to keep. I'm going to put these little relief cuts into the wood here. Okay, so as I go ahead and I start cutting these, as I get to each cut, that little piece right there is going to drop off and fall away. And that gives room for my blade to go around to the next part of the curve without twisting in here and binding up on my guide bearings. Okay, so if I turn too sharp, you can always tell the machine starts to slow down and the guide bearings start to spin like crazy. So you want to plan as much forward progress as you can because that's where it cuts, but you want to have your relief cuts in here so it helps you keep that forward progress without bending the saw blade around. Okay, so let's make a couple of relief cuts. And this is all what they look like. I like to, when I'm putting this and using this, I like to put my fingers to the side of the blade. I never want to be in line with the blade. Okay? Good practice to keep all your body parts not in line with the blade. So I'm just going to put a couple of relief cuts in here. And it doesn't matter where I put them. I don't have to be right on the lines that I drew. I'm just kind of going up to that black line that I want to keep, but not right to it. I'm going to try to cut about a 1/16 of an inch off of that black line. And the 1/16 of an inch is about the width of a mechanical pencil blade. So there's my relief cut. That's kind of what they look like. Here they are from the back. And my profile that I want to cut off is right here. Alright? So when I start my cut, I want to start with my line lined up with the saw blade. I don't want to start like this and then have to get really close to it and turn it really sharp to make it to my line. I want to start what my line is doing. So I'm going to start right here, fairly close to my line, about a 1/16 of an inch away. And I want to go down and I'm going to drop that piece off. Then I'm going to go down to the next one, drop that one off. And you notice I have not crossed my black line yet. I don't want to cross the black line. I'm in charge of the saw. So if it starts to dive into my line like this, I can always back up, come back in, and make sure that I don't cross the black line. So here it is again. I'm coming out. I can back up a little bit now and then. That's okay. Not a big deal. So all those parts are ready to come out. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can come out and finish your cutoff. Number one is you never want to have your thumbs here. Okay? My preferred method is to walk around the back of the saw and I'm going to pull the material through the last part of the cut. Like that. Okay? Another way to finish this off would be to grab a piece of scrap wood or a push stick or something in there where I can put it in behind it and I can go ahead and cut it, and if it pops out, it hits the push stick, not my finger. Okay? So I've finished my cut. There it is. Now I just got to turn the saw off. To do that, I push the red button over here and I step on the brake on the bottom. And I let that thing come to a complete stop before I reach in here to clear out any of my scrap. Usually what I will use, because I don't like my fingers getting close to the blade at all, I'll use my good piece and I'll just kind of pick it out and shove it all away. Okay? Another thing you could do is you could use your push stick or another piece of scrap wood. Like this one's not bad. I could grab the one from the back and then use that to flick the rest of the stuff out of the way. That's kind of what I like to do. If you look at this, this is not a smooth surface. That's okay. Okay? I never crossed my black line, which is what I didn't want to do. All right? The rest of this material right here in this curve, we're going to take off with the spindle sander. And that's a round sander that'll take all this off, and then I can just sand down to my line and get it to be nice and perfectly smooth and the exact profile that I want it to be. Okay? So in a nutshell, that's how to do that. Okay? So put in some relief cuts. Use your saw to cut to your relief cuts. Let those little guys drop out of there. And that'll keep the tension off the blade and the guide bearings, and you're good to go. Okay? Now, a couple of things to remember also. This is the part that we're going to keep. What you may want to do too, if you are into a curve, like say we cut this nice gentle curve right here, and I screwed up and I'm right here. Okay? I'm into this curve cut more than 2 inches. So that means instead of trying to back it out with the machine on, it's going to take the blade and start pulling it out of the guide bearings. That's a bad thing. So if I'm into it this far and I need to back up and take the blade all the way out, I have to shut off the machine, totally shut it off, let it come to a complete stop. Then I can walk the blade back out through my curve. Okay? Also, if I'm cutting too sharp, that means I'm taking the blade and I'm twisting it. You're going to see the guide bearings start to spin really fast. And you're going to hear them going whoo, spinning up. So if you get to that point, you need to back up a little bit, let the blade come back to the normal straight position, and then you can go ahead and make a cut again. Okay, so you got to pay attention to the guide bearings and how tight of a curve that you're doing. Okay, so again, once you get more into a cut more than 2 inches, if you need to back up more than about a 1/4 inch, you need to shut the saw off and back it out afterwards. Okay? A couple other things really fast. If you do happen to get into an emergency situation where it's really bent over sideways and you're putting a lot of pressure on the blade, it may break. Okay? If it breaks, first thing you want to do is just get your hands off the table. I don't care what it does to the piece of wood. I just don't want your fingers in there. Okay? The bend will break. The saw, sometimes I've seen them where the whole 17 feet of blade will come out, hit the table, go off the side of the table, and it'll all end up on the floor. Okay, if that happens, you're just going to hands off, take a step back, and just let it happen what's going to happen. Okay, reach over and shut off the machine if you can, but don't worry about trying to catch anything or get your fingers in there trying to get your part out. We can always make another part, but I can't attach your fingers back on. Okay, so if the band breaks, step away, let it do what it's going to do. And that pretty much gets this whole thing right here. You're good to go. Put your relief cuts in. Make sure that the saw has stopped before you clear your scrap out. Don't cut tighter than the blade will allow you. Okay? Plan as much forward progress as you can. If you get more than 2 inches into the blade, into the piece of wood, and you have to back all the way out, you need to shut the machine off and back it out. Other than that, happy cutting.